For 2 years, I was the student government president's workhorse. She was the campus ice queen, the girl with the permanent 4.0 GPA and a perfectly calibrated, formulaic smile. I organized her files, took drinks for her at mixers, and cleaned up her messes. Everyone said I was her most loyal lapdog. So, when she was reelected, I finally worked up the nerve to tell her how I felt. "Good work," she said, handing me a distinguished member certificate. Her tone was the same one a CEO uses to praise an intern. "I don't want to see you in the student government next term." I had just been publicly executed. I turned and walked away. But at the turn of the stairwell, I was stopped by her arch-rival, the scorchingly hot vice president. She hooked her finger under my chin, her red lips breathing warmth against my ear. "My dear sister only likes useful toys. Once she's bored, she throws them away. Not like me. I just love picking up discarded little puppies." She paused, her voice dropping to a husky whisper, "and taking them home to get them dirty." The student government general election assembly was over. Victoria Vance, as expected, had won her re-election campaign in a unanimous landslide. Under the spotlights, she wore a tasteful white power suit, her face a mask of perfect, unimpeachable composure. I stood in the crowd below the stage, my heart hammering against my ribs. 2 years, 730 days of slaving away for her, handling all the dirty work, all leading up to this moment. Her acceptance speech ended, and she began handing out the awards for distinguished members. Next, Ethan Miller. I took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. I accepted the flimsy piece of paper from her hand. "Victoria, I'm in love with you," I said in a voice only the two of us could hear, letting out the words I had suppressed for 2 long years. The smile on her face didn't waver for a second. "Good work." Her voice was soft, but it hit my chest like a sledgehammer. "I don't want to see you in the student government next term." I froze. Whispers rippled through the audience. "Isn't that the guy who's been the president's shadow for 2 years? Ethan something. Did he actually confess? Wow, gutsy." Judging by her face, that was a hard no. A public execution. Brutal. The words burrowed into my ears, and my face burned hot. I looked at Victoria, but her eyes were calm, placid, as if she were looking at a complete stranger. I understood. A loyal dog, once it loses its value, isn't even worth an extra glance. My heart felt like it had been crushed in a fist, the pain so sharp I couldn't breathe. I didn't say another word. I let my hand fall open. The certificate, declaring me a distinguished member, fluttered down and landed in the trash can beside the stage. The entire auditorium went silent. I saw a crack finally appear in Victoria Vance's perfect smile. I turned my back, walked off the stage, and didn't look back. Every step felt like walking on broken glass. Pushing through the heavy doors of the auditorium, I leaned against the wall in the stairwell, gasping for air. Humiliation and pain washed over me in suffocating waves. A rich, heavy scent of perfume drifted towards me. Scarlett Reed, the student government vice president and Victoria's mortal enemy, was leaning against the opposite wall, watching me with an air of casual amusement. She was wearing a fire engine red slip dress today, a sizzling, provocative outfit that was completely out of place in this stuffy, institutional building. "What are you crying about?" She walked over to me, extending a hand with sharp, red nails to hook my chin. "My dear sister only likes useful toys. Once she's bored, she throws them away." Her red lips were close to my ear, her breath smelling of liquor. "Not like me. I just love picking up discarded little puppies." She whispered, "and taking them home to get them dirty." Her words were like poison, and somehow also the antidote. I looked at her face, a mix of playful mockery and a surprising hint of sincerity, and as if possessed, I nodded. "That's a good boy." She smiled, grabbing my wrist. Her skin was searing hot, the complete opposite of Victoria's icy touch. She pulled me along, and we burst out of the building. The cold night air hit my face, and I felt like I had been born again. That night, I went back to my dorm and methodically erased every trace of Victoria Vance from my life. I blocked her number. I unfriended and blocked her on every social media platform. I deleted the private calendar I'd maintained just for her, the one that tracked all her deadlines and even her menstrual cycle. When it was all done, I felt completely drained, as if all the strength had been sucked out of me. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Scarlett, a drop pin for a downtown bar. The message read, "Come out and play, puppy." At the bar, the deafening music felt like it was about to tear the roof off. The flashing, multicolored lights were dizzying. Scarlett pushed a glass of amber-colored liquor in front of me. "Drink this." "Forget her." I picked up the glass and downed it in one go. The harsh liquid burned a path from my throat to my stomach, so intense it brought tears to my eyes. The alcohol and all my pin-up humiliation went straight to my head. Want to see her lose her mind over you for once? Scarlett leaned in close, her voice cutting through the noise with perfect clarity. My eyes were red. I said nothing. Let's put on a show, she coaxed. We'll pretend to be together. Just imagine, she purred, the look on the face of that high and mighty ice queen when she sees her most loyal little dog has been snatched up by her worst enemy. The idea of revenge, like a seed, began to sprout wildly in my mind. Okay, I heard myself say, my voice hoarse. Scarlett smiled, a triumphant, vixen-like grin. Over the next few days, she began my renovation in earnest. She made me throw out all my drab, monochrome t-shirts and replace them with tailored button-downs and stylish jackets. You have a great facial structure. Why are you hiding behind those things? She took off my thick, black-framed glasses and forced me to switch to contacts. For the first time, looking in the mirror, I saw that my own eyes had a sharp, focused intensity. She dragged me to one of her friends' parties. It was a world I had never been a part of, where everyone was bold, confident, and vibrantly alive. I stood awkwardly in a corner until Scarlett, holding a glass of champagne, pushed me into the center of the room. Everyone, this is my new boyfriend, Ethan. He's a total genius in the computer science department. For the first time, I wasn't Victoria Vance's lapdog. I was just Ethan. A girl with flawless makeup came over and asked for my number. I was so flustered I just stood there frozen. Scarlett reappeared, sliding an arm naturally around my waist and shooting the other girl a challenging smile. Sorry, gorgeous. He's taken. The warmth of her hand on my hip sent a jolt through my entire body. The next day, a photo of Scarlett and me eating together in the dining hall was all over the campus forum. The headline read, #IceQueenS_lapdog_snatch_siren. There were hundreds of comments, a chaotic mix of shock and gossip. I saw one from a girl I recognized as one of Victoria's cronies, a junior named Jessica. Her comment read, "Some people are so ungrateful. The second you get kicked out, you find a new master. So disloyal." I read the comment and felt nothing but a dark flicker of amusement. Ungrateful? I'd been her free labor for 2 years and got a don't want to see you for my trouble. Who was the ungrateful one here? Scarlett slid her phone in front of my face. It was Victoria's Instagram, which she had just updated. A photo of the empty student government office late at night, with only the lamp on her desk lit. The caption, efficiency. I knew that desk. On every other night like this, I had been the one sitting there with her, working late. Now, she was proving to me, or to everyone, that she was just fine without me. See? She's rattled, Scarlett said, a laugh in her voice. She's already trying to prove she doesn't need you. I stared at the picture and felt something for the first time. Leaving her hadn't made my world collapse after all. My dating game with Scarlett continued. We started making a point of appearing wherever Victoria might be. In a library, we chose the most conspicuous table. Scarlett rested her head on my shoulder, pretending to nap. It wasn't long before Victoria appeared. She was carrying a stack of books and walked past our table, her pace faltering for less than half a second before she continued on to her usual spot without a glance in our direction. Everything seemed normal, but after she'd settled, I happened to glance over at her table. Her water bottle had tipped over, soaking half a book. I knew for a fact that Victoria was a notorious neat freak with obsessive-compulsive tendencies. She never, ever allowed for mistakes like that. A strange, twisted thrill shot through me. That afternoon, a junior officer from the SGA found me. He used a commanding tone, telling me to hand over an encrypted project file for the student government. Only I knew the password. Talk to President Vance. I've been dismissed, I said flatly, not even bothering to look at him. The guy, having been thoroughly rebuffed, walked off in a huff. Half an hour later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Ethan, come here." Just 3 words. No punctuation, but that entitled, commanding tone was all too familiar. It was Victoria. I stared at those 3 words, and 2 years of memories of being at her beck and call, of my own pathetic eagerness, came flooding back. My stomach churned. I didn't reply. Scarlett leaned over my shoulder and saw the message. She let out a short, sharp laugh, then took my phone. Her fingers flew across the screen, typing 2 words before hitting send. Busy. After sending the message, she handed the phone back to me and gave me a wink. That's how you handle her. That evening, the unknown number called. I rejected it without a second thought and blocked the number. I was starting to enjoy this feeling, this escape from her control, even though a dull ache still throbbed deep inside me. That weekend, Scarlett took me to an art and design exhibition. She said one of her pieces had been selected, and she needed me there as her arm candy. As fate would have it, we ran into Victoria and her team in the main gallery. She was probably there gathering inspiration for some SGA event. She saw me, and she saw Scarlett standing next to me. As if she hadn't seen her at all, Scarlett stood on her toes and planted a quick, firm kiss on my cheek. The warm, soft touch was gone in an instant. "Your reward," she whispered in my ear, her voice just loud enough for the people across the way to hear. I instinctively looked at Victoria. I saw her hands clench into tight fists, her knuckles turning white from the force. Her face remained a blank mask, but her eyes were churning with a dark tide I had never seen before. It was a chaotic mix of shock, rage, and a flicker of hurt. My heart, at the most inopportune moment, skipped a beat. The provocation escalated. In the eyes of the campus, my relationship with Scarlett was now a done deal. We met up in a new coffee shop that had just opened near campus. Scarlett ordered a latte, took a sip, and then deliberately used her finger to wipe a bit of milk foam from her upper lip. She extended her finger towards my mouth. "Want a taste? It's sweet." The gesture was loaded with suggestion and flirtation. My first instinct was to pull back, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw a familiar figure. Victoria. She was sitting by the window, not far from us, an English-language finance textbook open in her hands, a cup of black Americano in front of her. Her gaze was cutting through the crowd, pinned directly on us. As if possessed by some demon, I didn't refuse Scarlett. I opened my mouth and let her foam-covered finger brush lightly against my lips. A cloying sweetness spread across my tongue. Crash! A loud noise shattered the cafe's quiet atmosphere. It was Victoria. She had shot to her feet so abruptly that she'd knocked the edge of her table. The coffee cup had fallen to the floor and shattered. Dark brown liquid splashed all over the hem of her pristine white skirt. Everyone in the cafe turned to look, but she didn't seem to notice. She walked straight towards us, the sharp clicks of her heels on the floor an aggressive staccato. She stopped in front of me, looking down at me, her expression unreadable. "Ethan, there's a problem with your financial aid application. Come with me to the office." I laughed silently to myself. An excuse. Such a pathetic, clumsy excuse. My grades were at the top of my department. My financial aid application was flawless. Every single one I'd ever submitted had been personally reviewed and approved by her. "President Vance," Scarlett drawled, not even bothering to stand up. "It's lunchtime. And besides, Ethan isn't your subordinate anymore. You have no authority to order him around." Victoria's gaze finally shifted from me to Scarlett. It was cold enough to kill. "This is official university business. It has nothing to do with you." She turned back to me, her eyes locking onto mine. "Ethan, come with me." Her tone was the same as always, imperious, leaving no room for argument. I slowly stood up, meeting her gaze. "My application is fine," I said calmly. "If there's an issue, have the financial aid office contact me, not you." With that, I took Scarlett's wrist. "Let's go." I walked right past her. For the first time, I didn't look back, but I could feel her icy stare boring into my back the entire way out. That evening, I got a call from my academic advisor. He was cheerful, telling me that President Vance was very concerned about my academic progress and had personally recommended me for a spot on a state-funded research initiative she was leading. It was a project people were desperate to get into. I knew this was her new method of control. "Professor, thank you for President Vance's kind offer," I said, "but I'm busy with my own projects right now. I won't be able to participate." I rejected it flatly. The advisor on the other end of the line was clearly taken aback, probably shocked that I would turn down such a golden opportunity. After hanging up, I stared out at the night sky. "Victoria, what the hell are you trying to do? You're the one who pushed me away. Are these pathetic games supposed to prove how irresistible you are, or that I can't live without you?" A strange mix of annoyance and wariness began to build in the pit of my stomach. The annual homecoming gala arrived. Backstage was a scene of controlled chaos. As a tech assistant from the computer science department, I was in charge of the lighting and soundboard. And the director of the entire gala was, of course, Victoria. She was wearing a sharp black pantsuit, holding a walkie-talkie, and orchestrating everything with methodical precision. Calm, powerful, omnipotent. This was her in her element. She saw me adjusting the equipment, frowned, and started walking over. "Ethan, there's a programming glitch in Spotlight 3. The show starts in 5 minutes. Fix it. Now." She slipped back in her old habit of ordering me around, her voice laced with an undeniable pressure. Just as she reached me, ready to give more instructions, a flash of red appeared from the side of the stage. It was Scarlett. She was one of the hosts for the night, poured into a shimmering red mermaid gown. She was breathtakingly beautiful. "Sorry, Got to borrow your man for a second. She shot Victoria a defiant grin, then grabbed my arm and pulled me behind a thick velvet curtain. The light instantly dimmed. Time for the grand finale, Scarlett whispered, her warm breath tickling my ear. Before I could react, she cupped my face in her hands, and as I stared at her in shock, she kissed me. It was an aggressive, urgent kiss. Her lips were soft, tasting of sweet lipstick. My mind went completely blank, my heart rate skyrocketing in an instant. Outside the curtain, Victoria's footsteps had stopped right in front of us. I could see her rigid silhouette projected onto the fabric by the stage lights. Scarlett finally pulled away. She licked her own lipstick-smeared lips, then threw back the curtain to face a pale-faced Victoria. "President Vance, so sorry," she said, her voice dripping with mock politeness. "Just had to borrow your former subordinate. He's not bad at all." I could finally see Victoria's face clearly. Her eyes were instantly red. It wasn't anger. It was the look of someone who had been completely destroyed, a maelstrom of jealousy, pain, and utter disbelief. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Without saying a thing, she spun around and walked away. Her retreat wasn't a strategic withdrawal. It was a panicked, desperate flight. The walkie-talkie slipped from her hand and hit the floor, emitting a harsh crackle of static. With her abrupt departure, the entire backstage chain of command fell apart. I just stood there, the taste of Scarlett still on my lips, my heart pounding relentlessly. I watched the spot where Victoria had disappeared, a complex mix of vengeful satisfaction and a flicker of pity churning in my chest. After the gala ended, I packed up my equipment and got ready to leave. Just as I reached the backstage exit, a hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. A powerful force dragged me into a nearby equipment closet. The door slammed shut and was locked from the inside. In the dark, I smelled the familiar, cold scent of cedarwood that always clung to Victoria. It was her. The light flicked on. She was leaning against the door, her chest heaving, the iciness in her eyes replaced by a frantic, burning heat. Her hair was a mess, her perfect makeup was smudged, and her eyes were ringed with red. "What is it about her?" she demanded, her voice raw, stripped of its usual calm authority. "That she's hot? That she'll play your games? That she'll kiss you the way she did?" She advanced on me, step by step, like a cornered animal. "I can give you all of that." I was backed into a corner with nowhere to retreat. She slammed her hands on the wall on either side of my head, trapping me completely within her presence. "Come back," she commanded, staring at me, her words sharp and deliberate. "Come back to me. I can make you the vice president of the SGA. I can get you a guaranteed recommendation for the honors grad program. Just stay away from her." I looked at this strange, crazed version of her and was suddenly struck by the sheer absurdity of it all. I let out a cold, bitter laugh. "Victoria, have you forgotten? You're the one who told me to get lost." The words were a knife, and they plunged directly into her heart. Her body shuddered, and the madness in her eyes receded, replaced by a thick, desperate wave of panic and pleading. I was wrong. "Ethan, I take it back. I take it all back." "Too late," I said, cutting her off coldly. I reached out to push her away, wanting nothing more than to be free of this entanglement. But she suddenly wrapped her arms around me from behind, squeezing so tightly it hurt. A warm drop of liquid fell onto the back of my neck. She was crying. "Don't you go." Her voice was thick with sobs, stripped of every last shred of her presidential authority. "You're not allowed to leave. You're mine. You promised you'd always be by my side. Have you forgotten all of that?" Her cries were like the desperate howls of a trapped animal. Her raw desperation and vulnerability stunned me into stillness. The Victoria Vance, who was always so composed, so untouchable, so incapable of losing control, was now having a complete breakdown behind me, clinging to me like a child, using the clumsiest, most primal methods to try and keep me. My mind was in chaos. I finally managed to push her away and escaped from the equipment room. She didn't follow, but I knew this wasn't over. The next morning, as I walked out of my dorm building, I saw a figure that was completely out of place. It was Victoria. She was wearing an out-of-place professional suit and holding a paper bag from a cafe. She stood there, shifting awkwardly, in the middle of the morning rush outside the men's dorm, a place she had never set foot in before. She saw me and immediately rushed over, holding out the breakfast bag. "I bought you breakfast." Her voice was still hoarse, and her eyes held a look of careful, timid hope. I recognized the bag. It was from the same shop where I used to buy her coffee and a breakfast sandwich every morning. A sharp pang went through my chest. "I already ate," I said, my face a blank mask, and walked right past her. I didn't look back, but I could feel her gaze glued to me. At the corner, Scarlett's flashy red convertible pulled up right on time. I got in. As the car pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Victoria was still standing there, frozen in place like an abandoned statue. From that day on, she began a clumsy, almost comical campaign of imitation. She started texting me the weather forecast every morning, reminding me to dress appropriately, just like the alerts I used to set for her in that private calendar. I muted the unknown number she was using. When I was in the library working with my project group, she would suddenly appear under the guise of academic collaboration and bring coffee and pastries for our entire team. My group members were starstruck, tripping over their words with excitement. "Oh my God, it's President Vance. She brought us coffee. Ethan, dude, you've got some serious connections." I, on the other hand, felt like I was sitting on pins and needles, desperate to escape. Scarlett appeared out of nowhere, picked up the cup of coffee Victoria had placed on my desk, and took a long sip. And she grinned at me. "Still not as good as the kind I make for you." I saw the color drain from Victoria's face. She even started auditing one of my major specific classes. She filled an entire notebook with detailed notes and handed it to me after class. These were all things I had once done for her countless times. Now, our roles were completely reversed. I took the notebook from her and, without even flipping it open, took a picture and posted it in our department's group chat. My caption: "Notes from Victoria Vance on the key topics. Good luck on finals, everyone." The chat immediately erupted with a chorus of praise for how kind and brilliant she was. After I sent it, I put my phone away without giving her a second glance. The message was clear: everything you're doing right now means nothing to me. Leave me alone. At the end of the semester came the final student government debate for the new presidential election. It was Victoria's last official public appearance as the outgoing president. She needed to deliver a perfect closing statement to cap off her brilliant SGA career. As a regular student, I sat in the back row of the audience, watching the proceedings like a play that had nothing to do with me. Victoria's speech was, as always, flawless and articulate, until the Q&A session. A candidate running for vice president, one of her rivals, suddenly stood up and posed a sharp question about the data from one of her key projects. The guy had clearly come prepared, pointing out a discrepancy between a number in her slide deck and a figure published in a campus newspaper the previous year. "President Vance, was this an oversight from your team, or is there an issue of data fabrication within the project itself?" The question was venomous. Every eye in the auditorium was fixed on Victoria. I saw her face go pale. She calmly tried to open the USB drive she carried with her, intending to pull up the raw data to refute the claim. "My apologies, there seems to be an issue with the drive," she said, her voice wavering slightly. The primary data was corrupted. She needed the backup, and that backup, in the past, had always been my responsibility to organize and maintain, stored on encrypted cloud server. Only I knew the password. She stood on the stage, trapped in the glare of the spotlight. Her gaze cut through the dark, crowded auditorium and, with desperate precision, landed on me. Her eyes held no trace of their former pride or coldness. There was only a raw, naked plea for help. Her lips moved, and I read the word they formed. "Ethan, help me." Scarlett, sitting next to me, nudged me with her elbow. "Look," she whispered, "the Queen's scepter is broken. Right now, she's just a little girl who needs someone to save her." My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. Our eyes met across the room. The past 2 years flashed through my mind in a dizzying montage. The time I drank so much for her at a mixer that I ended up with acute gastritis, and she just told me over the phone to get myself to the hospital. The time I spent all night revising her presentation, only for her to announce to everyone the next day that it was the result of her team's hard work. The day she publicly dismissed me, when what she threw in the trash wasn't just a certificate, but 2 years of my youth and all of my devotion. Slowly, deliberately, I broke her gaze. I looked away. I looked out the window. I saw her sway on stage, nearly losing her balance. She just stood there for the first time in front of the entire student body, speechless, unable to answer the challenge. It was the first and most devastating public failure of her dazzling career. A murmur of discussion spread through the auditorium. I stood up and left before it was over. "Victoria, we're even now." After the debate, I didn't go back to my dorm. I went up to the roof of the science building alone. The evening wind was cold against my face, but my mind was strangely calm. I heard footsteps behind me. It was Scarlett. She handed me a cold beer. "Feel better?" She leaned against the railing, looking at me sideways. Her expression was no longer teasing or provocative. There was a complexity in her eyes. I didn't say anything. I just opened the beer and took a long swallow. You know, Victoria and I have known each other since we were kids, she said suddenly. I froze and turned to look at her. We used to be best friends. Scarlett's voice was distant, as if she were telling someone else's story. Her family is incredibly strict. Both her parents are top academics, and they only had one requirement for her: be perfect. No mistakes allowed. No unnecessary emotions allowed. No being an ordinary person allowed. So she turned herself into a program. Precise, efficient, but also cold and lifeless. I listened in silence. I've seen the way she used to look at you, Scarlett said, turning to meet my eyes. When you were throwing up your guts after taking drinks for her. When you stayed up all night by her bedside when she had a fever. When you pulled 3 all-nighters for one of her projects. That wasn't the way someone looks at a tool or a subordinate. It was a kind of dependence, a possessiveness she couldn't even understand herself. It's not that she didn't like you. She was terrified that liking you would make her lose control, make her imperfect. Scarlett said she couldn't stand to watch Victoria's self-destructive perfectionism, nor could she stand my pathetic, groveling devotion. So she decided to play the villain and diffuse herself. I made a bet with her, she said. I told her I could take you from her, that I could make her watch as you became someone else's. If I won, she had to give up her ridiculous obsession with being perfect and face what she really felt. I stared at her, stunned into silence. So this whole thing, it was all just an elaborate gamble. The day I kissed you, she didn't go right back to directing the gala, Scarlett continued. She hid in a bathroom stall and threw up. And at the debate today, I had someone corrupt the data on her USB drive. Unless you push her to the absolute brink, she would never understand that all that so-called honor and perfection is worthless compared to you. Scarlett patted my shoulder. Anyway, my part in this drama is over. What's left is your choice to make, Ethan. Whether you walk away for good, or you give her a chance. I looked at this woman who had always seemed like a playful, carefree siren, and for the first time, I felt her sincerity and an inexplicable kindness. My mind was a complete mess. I walked back towards my dorm in a daze, Scarlett's revelation replaying over and over in my head. My heart was a chaotic mix of bitter, sweet, and sour. I was just approaching the building when I stopped dead in my tracks. Standing under a streetlight was a thin, drenched figure. It was Victoria. A torrential downpour had started sometime without my noticing. She didn't have an umbrella. She was just standing there in the rain. Her expensive suit was soaked through, clinging to her frame. Her meticulously styled hair was ruined, plastered to her head. She looked as fragile as a piece of porcelain about to shatter. She saw me and immediately ran over. Rain and tears mingled on her pale cheeks. Ethan, I know I was wrong, she said, her voice trembling uncontrollably. It's not that I don't like you. It's that I was afraid to like you. She was sobbing so hard she could barely get a complete sentence out. I was raised to never have any weaknesses. I was terrified of losing control, of depending on someone. I was afraid you would become my weakness, that people would use you to attack me. So I pushed you away. I used the cruelest words I could think of to drive you off because I wanted to prove to myself that I didn't need you. But I couldn't even last a single day. When I saw you with Scarlett, I was so jealous I thought I was going to go insane. I was jealous that she could be so close to you, so carefree. I was jealous that you smiled at her. I started trying to copy the way you were good to me, bringing you breakfast, sending you messages, writing you notes. And only then did I realize just how much you did for me, and how I just took it all for granted. She grabbed my hand. Her skin was terrifyingly cold. I screwed everything up. The presidency, my reputation, what other people think. I don't want any of it anymore. Ethan, will you come back? Please. I'm begging you. This was the first time I had ever seen her so completely broken, so crying like a helpless child. I looked at her lips, purple with cold, and her red-rimmed eyes. The hardest, most fortified part of my heart began to crack, then crumble. In silence, I took off my jacket and draped it over her trembling shoulders. Then I took her cold hand and led her inside the dorm building. My room was small and messy. This was the first time Victoria had ever been inside. She stood awkwardly by the door, not knowing what to do with her hands or feet. I poured her a cup of hot water and had her sit in my desk chair. The silence was thick and uncomfortable. Finally, I broke the silence. In a voice that was almost unnervingly calm, I began to recount every moment of my devotion and heartbreak over the past 2 years. I talked about the time I had food poisoning so bad I nearly passed out in my room, and I called her. She had just said coolly, "Go to the hospital yourself. I have an important meeting," and then hung up. I talked about her 20th birthday, how I'd used a month's worth of my living expenses to buy her a necklace she pointed out once. She accepted it, tossed it on her desk, and promptly forgot about it, never wearing it once. I talked about the time she pissed off some guys from the athletics department during her campaign, and they threatened to teach her a lesson. I was the one who intercepted them, taking a beating for her, then lying and saying I'd fallen down the stairs so she wouldn't worry. With every story I told, Victoria's face grew another shade paler, tears streaming down her face in silence. By the time I finished, the only sound in the room was her suppressed sobbing. Her voice was raw as she apologized, over and over again. "I'm sorry. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I really didn't know." She told me about the pressure from her family, her parents' almost pathological need for control, which made her terrified of taking a single wrong step, of allowing herself any unnecessary emotions. I thought if I was just excellent enough, strong enough, I could protect myself and protect the people I cared about. But when I saw you with Scarlett, I realized that nothing is more terrifying than losing you. She got up from the chair and walked over to me. Her expression was one of absolute seriousness as she lowered her head and bowed deeply, a gesture of profound, unconditional apology. "Ethan, please give me one more chance. This time, let me be the one to come to you." I looked at her, silent for a long, long time. The hurt, the anger, the resentment, and that stubborn, unshakable affection all swirled together inside me. Finally, I stepped forward and raised my hand. I wiped the tears from her face, and then I pulled her into a tight embrace. Okay, the news that Victoria and I were officially together once again blew up the campus forum. This time, there was no mockery, no pity. The comment section was just a flood of holy SHD, and my ship has sailed. We walked across campus holding hands. She was no longer the ice queen who always strode 10 feet ahead of everyone else. She would slow down to match my pace, look up at me, and smile, her eyes sparkling like they were full of stars. She started trying to bring me breakfast, though she often got my order wrong. When I was deep in code, she would sit quietly beside me with a book, instead of summoning me to the SGA office with a single phone call. The other members of the student government would see her slip her arm through mine, and their jaws would collectively drop. I was with her when she officially stepped down from her position as student government president. On her last day, she looked more relaxed than I had ever seen her. She told me she had already applied to the same graduate school in the same city as me. She was planning our future together. We ran into Scarlett on the quad one day. She was as radiant and brazen as ever. Seeing us, she shot me a quick wink. Then she turned to Victoria, crossing her arms. "I'm returning my little puppy to you, for now. If you lose him again, I'm not giving him back." For the first time, I saw Victoria blush, but she squeezed my hand tighter and looked Scarlett right in the eye. "He's mine now," she declared with quiet certainty, "and I won't lose him again." Scarlett threw her head back and laughed, then turned and walked away, giving us a final wave, exiting our world as effortlessly as she had entered it. That night, in the new apartment we'd rented together, I was in the kitchen doing the dishes when Victoria came up and wrapped her arms around me from behind. She buried her face in my back, her voice muffled. "Ethan, Sr." She was mimicking the formal way I used to address her. "Starting today, how about I slave away for you?" I turned off the faucet, turned around, and pinched her cheek. "Okay, in that case, my dedicated little workhorse, are you ready to start your duties tonight?" Her face turned beet red, but she still tilted her head up, stood on her toes, and clumsily, earnestly, kissed me. Outside the window, the moonlight was gentle,